am finally back from my freaking long break. And OMG, I honestly can say that I was sick for a week with a weird virus, things like that. That's why I couldn't stream last week, because I had congested in my body and things like that. So I found something very, very, very interesting, actually, that how I seen this guy who I seen in 2023. He was unexpectedly a colonel for the U.S. military, and I last listened to him around like August 2023 when he said some very unusual stuff. He said stuff like the sun and the moon's gonna kiss, and he talked about the Bible. He didn't talk about anything related to like Jesus got crucifixion, none of that stuff. But he did talk about how the nations are gonna crash and where we headed and things like that. And you think for a minute, it sounds just like a myth. I'm like, that's not gonna happen, right? Well, it did. It happened. So like when October 7th happened, all I could say to myself is, that guy for real? Whatever the hell he's talking about, his name is Douglas. I'm gonna to pull up his video in a second. Now, 2-3 years later, it is 2026, a little bit before 2030. And now this guy is back again, and he's talking about all these things. And I'm just like, okay, give me 1 second, and I gotta go tell my daughter to go in her grandfather's room because she's making noise. Bad thing about apartment is this. Amaya, go lay with Grandpa. Stop making noise. Okay. I'm back, guys. So, like literally, I'm back. So literally, he gave me really good information. Now, normally people will be like, oh, he's stupid, or he's anti-American, or he's, he's being anti-Israel. No, I don't. When it comes to research, you have to collect the good information and also the bad information, because you don't know when that information is going to come useful to you in what time period. And now his information is kind of useful to me, because after reviewing spaces 6-7 months, there's either war crash on the Gulf, or then a new update, or we're coming to a peace agreement again. And you think for a minute, nothing happened. We haven't moved yet. So that's when this guy won my undivided attention. I'm going to pull him up, and we're going to watch what he has to say. 2 videos, okay? And I'm going to walk and talk along with it. Here we go. So I'm going to share my screen and bring it up, and we are going to play it. Bring it up. Okay, here we go. We are going to watch this. I'm going to watch this guy. People are going to think that, nah, it's not true, but sometimes even the stupidest things can be true. Ready? And I'm going to open the sound.
Because we put the full faith and credit and power of we have lost in Iran. We have lost in Ukraine. When I say we, I'm talking about the United States. Because we put the full faith and credit and power of the United States behind these very stupid, unnecessary wars. All of our allies are on the skids. Everybody's going broke. Nobody has any money. There will be no great mobilization of Europe against Russia. But what's happened in the meantime? China, which has profited enormously from our stupidity, is the rising power in the world. It is de facto the greatest economy in the world today. In terms of purchasing parity, absolutely, without question. So then we turn away from China, we look at Russia. Russia is in superb condition because the Russians have husbanded their resources.
Okay, so let me explain why. Okay, we're going to come to the statistic point. We're not going to come to the side game. My channel is not a side game option. It's about statistics and review. So in 2023, he stated that China will be taking Taiwan by 2030, and it is on its way through. He's the one who said Russia and Ukraine war. And believe it or not, I didn't think that Russia and Ukraine would get into a war this far. He stated all this in 2023. And the U.S., what I didn't know other than Israel, that U.S. was supposed to help Taiwan and Ukraine in this war. Now you think, now this is where I would say sometimes to people, you need to get a geography book or a history book to review what is this mess, what are these narratives, and what are these connections through these wars. Like even today, not a lot of the people know that people think that Moroccans are Moroccans, but technically they are Africans, and they don't know that Spain and what countries are linked to the European countries. Not many people know. So he said a lot of things. And now you think for a minute, like, are we headed to like unknown narratives resolvement war? What type of war are we actually headed into, right? So that's where I listened to this guy in 2023, and he said a lot of interesting things. He also told me the sun and the moon is going to kiss. Could you believe that? Yeah, and they did kiss, and I have the recording of that. He said a lot of things. And then he said some biblical scriptures that how we're going to do this and which way we're going to do this. And you think for a minute, you're looking at all these documentaries, stories away from creators, doing a little research, who is who is what, who's playing the lead, That's when I started to listen to it. Now it's 2026, and he's talking about the same shit all over again. Now you ask yourself, is this for real, or are we headed someplace else that we are not prepared for?
They have moved cautiously and deliberately, although I think that's about to change. And I guess we'll talk about that in a minute. But then you also have to look at Iran. Iran was supposed to have gone under several times. Its population was supposed to have starved and died and begged for mercy several times. The Iranians are not interested in talking to us anymore. No one is calling Trump and asking for talk.
Okay, now that is a bad sign. Let's review why that is a bad sign. Okay? Everybody from 2023, Israelis, almost anybody predicted that, Israel and America, they're going to join together as forces, what they call Judeo-Christians, that we're going to join together as forces and fight Iran. And they felt that Persia is going to revive again and the regime is going to be defeated. So I collected some information. I wanted to make a bet, and I'm like to the people from India, a couple of other places, that historically, do you really think it's going to happen? Do you think that regime is going to be defeated? Because, this is what journalists do. You ask around for information, ask for clues. Hey, is this for true? Including some local Americans. And they said one answer. I don't think so. Iran is not going to be defeated, and there's no cure for Iran, even though many Iranians have expectations that, Persia's going to revive again. Persia's going to revive again, and America's going to save us. Israel's going to save us. And I didn't even know, I'm learning this in the age of 39, that I didn't even know that Israel led the war to Iraq. I just know America warred, but I didn't know Israel participated in the war against Iraq and make Iraqis lose a nuclear weapon. Now that I did review some of that stuff, you think for a minute, is Iran going to have the same ending as Iraq? However, it's not going to surrender either, because that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like anywhere close is going to surrender. The country might get destroyed, yes. But the politicians, are they going to surrender the fight? It doesn't sound. And that's not a good move for anybody. And this is what I was concerned, even though people just monitor the television. Oh, look at how Ukraine beat Russia. Yeah, they were United States weapons. But that was my question. How long can United States keep giving its weapons? And is it not going to run out of utensil at some point? That was my biggest debate. And now here we are 2 years later, this guy is talking, again, about the same process. Again. Now, I have 2 videos. I'm going to show what he stated. And this is where it gets tricky. You think for a minute, is it too good to be true? Or are we headed to a phase 2 with another nation? So stay tuned, y'all. Listen away.
He's desperate for them. They're not going to happen. There is only one way out for Donald Trump and Iran. And that is for us to pack up our things and steal away into the night, to disappear quietly. If we don't do that, it will get worse for us. The rest of the global energy structure will be at high risk, much of it in the Gulf region destroyed, not just for a year or two, not for 3 or 4 years, for a decade or more. And when we leave, it's very obvious what happens. the only power in the world with the wealth, the expertise, and the power.
So this was my debate. I know I wrote, if there are smart Israelis, I wrote one of them. This is a war for power. 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 Let me repeat myself. This is a war for power. Power. Okay? Now, I know I met some Jews who believe in their Torah and some Jews believe in power. And I read one of the comments on this guy's video right here where the Jews were like, oh, China and Russia are on never again Israel side. Well, you think for a minute, no, they are not, because if you support Taiwan and Ukraine, why would they support on your side? It's same for the Iranian story. You either support Iranians or the Kurdish. The world is divided, not united. You need to pick a side. Either you're on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side, but the world will remain divided. So from this point on, you think for a minute, and I'm going to get to video 2 in a minute, it's August again, and this guy has new information. You think for a minute, are we headed to another phase of a war, but with new villains in the picture? And this is what this guy said last time in 2023, and he's giving the same statements 2 years later again.
Come in there and change anything, make anything right, rebuild anything is China. And the Turks are watching it. They're seeing who is winning and who is losing. It's only a matter of time. They want to be on the winning team, and they will join. And that'll be the end of it. And this thing we call Israel, which is a product of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, will be on the skids. They'll have a choice put to them. Either you live within the broader regional framework that we define on our terms, or you go away.
All right, so now we're going to go to video 2. Here's video 2, his statement. Where is video 2? Here's video 2. I have video 2 saved in my bookmarks, so let's go to my bookmarks. So the video 2 is actually pretty interesting because I was studying about this stuff in 2023, and I know when I went to DC, I also had this thing in my mind as well. Is this for real? Is this for real that we are going to go through this stuff? And it seems like it's too good to be true.
Any attempt to come back, that means that you've got to remove the United States from the region. How do you do that? You smash all the bases beyond repair. You make it patently obvious that any attempt to come back into that region and reestablish yourself on the ground is an impossibility. We are not fighting the war we were fighting just a few weeks ago. Donald Trump is fighting a rear guard action to try and preserve what little is left of our military political.
Okay, so this is where I raised the red flag question. This is what I know. I asked this with Indians, 100% with Indians, and I know a lot of Americans didn't like me for it, but that's okay. It's part of my job as a journalist. That who predicts yes and who predicts no. Okay, so many people predicted that Hamas can refill itself up again. Many people predicted that Iran can make it refill itself up again. Even if the country does get destroyed, it can refill itself back up again. But the question is how? How? And that's the question I've been asking almost every person. That, okay, the Europeans are stuck between Russia and America as a superpower. So if the Americans run out of utensils, soldier safety, almost anything, who's gonna extend this war without support? And if the Gulf dies, which is another thing I reviewed, the Gulf, there's no way the Gulf can survive without a Shia-Sunni war because Iran is Shia and the Gulf is Sunni. The fact is that when Iraq got attacked, this is a lot of the things I told, like a lot of the people in the activism club, that, you know, back in the day when Iran supported, America against Iraq, that's technically a Shia-Sunni war because back then Saddam was Sunni and Iran was okay with it. But one thing Iran did not do is give up its powers, even though the Americans in 2026 today, they're on a goal to say, hey, surrender to the war. Even though the Americans did pick its leadership, you can look this up. This is not me making it. This is all the stuff that I'm talking about. It's literally on the internet. That how Americans played a role to pick this Shia leadership. But the only things the Americans never predicted is that the Shia leadership would ever gain power in existence today, which they did. They gained too much power in existence today. Now, in a goal to stop all this, is what he's basically saying, even though some Israelis feel like, no, you will survive because America's the number one superpower, but even the most unexpected power can run out of utensil. Who said that nobody can ever run out of utensils? You can run out of the strong, even like, let's say you have a strong computer. The most powerful technology can even die. That's like saying nothing can ever die. No, even the most powerful electronic can even die. And that's what he's saying, that the more you expand the war, who's going to be United States backup? It's not Spain. It's not any of the European countries. But if the Gulf dies, that's going to put, well, Israel at risk, because all the bases for protection are in the Gulf countries, and they are officially destroyed. So who's going to be the protection around here? If you look at it, nobody. So this is pretty tricky. And who's going to be the fourth player for the superpower villain joining Iran? And that would be linked to heritage again, now wouldn't it? But listen away.
And economic power and dominance. And there's not that much left anymore. His attack on Iran was an acid test for our military power, our strength. We could have avoided it. We didn't need to do it. It was not required. But Netanyahu and his agents in the United States insisted upon it. Trump owes them whatever, and so he's done it. They're back, and they're going to tell him the only way this war ends is with the complete and utter destruction of Iran.
Freeze. Okay, so yes, that's exactly what happened to Iraq. A complete destruction of Iraq, and Iraq never covered since. So, but there's a twist here, a really big twist, a twist of the punch if you look at it, a really, really big twist. Iraq cannot heal itself because Iraq is trapped by Iran and United States of America, which is why I name Iraq the sandwich. Feed it up a little bit. Who's going to feed it to use Iraq? However, Iran is not sandwich. Iran never surrenders its power to anyone. Crazy at them, it sounds like a video game if you look at it. Iran never surrendered its power. So it's like somebody's going to run out of utensils, and Iran is going to keep playing the chessboard game. It may get destruction, it may get destroyed, just like how Iraq did. But the leaders, that's what he's saying, that the leaders, they're not going to give in. It don't sound like it. Rather, you destroy the country. You want to destroy every piece of Iran you possibly can to put it on fire for all you care. But the leaders, they're not going to give in. And that's what this guy is saying. Crazy it may feel, but yes. So you think for a minute, who's leading all this? And Iran has refills. Refill nations to refill it up. You refill the nation, it can refill Hamas up. So this is tricky more than you know it, and there's a twist in the middle. You'll see what he says farther ahead, which some people expected. At some point, this nation is going to step in, and how it's going to step in, you don't understand it yet, but it will, depending on what choices does Iran make because of its heritage.
I would turn that around and warn everyone that if he indeed does proceed, it's not the end of Iran. It'll finish us in the Gulf. That's absolutely certain. But it will be the end of Israel. And I think that privately, Netanyahu is worried about that. But he doesn't know what else to do. And the simple truth is the same for Ukraine. Either we give them more to sustain them for another month or two, or they too will go out of existence. And if we give them something to sustain them for another month or two, half of which will be stolen and end up in private bank accounts, they too will be destroyed. The handwriting, as we say, is on the wall. Ukraine is destroyed. That nation is finished. And oh, by the way, Iran.
Okay, so if you look at a military standpoint, like I'm going to try to show something before I can finish up the video. So let's look at statistic points. Let's go here. Who's more powerful according to military charter of the world? Who's more powerful? Russia or Ukraine? So we are at the military charter. If people can see my screen, yes, I'm here for a reason, so people can see the military chart. It's important to see that chart so you know. Okay, so we are going to go down here. Comparison of Russia, Ukraine. So compare 2026 Russia's military strength. Comparison. Okay, so oh my god, I don't like this. This is what I don't like about articles. You always have to deal with this stupid crap. Okay. And the Google software is so changed. Simple answer. Let's try simple answer. It's not ChatGPT anymore. Simple answer. Can you do it? Okay, that worked. Okay, so Russia is generally powerful than Ukraine in terms of military size, nuclear capabilities, conventional weaponry through Ukraine has demonstrated sufficient resilience and strategic effectiveness, military strength. And here we go. Russia maintains substantial advantage troops numbers of equipment. It has larger standing army, air force, navy, and mobilized over 2 billion personnel annually compared to Ukraine's 392,000. Russia also possesses quantum edge aircraft, armed vehicle, long missile thing. So you think for a minute, how did Ukraine survive? But I already reviewed that if people pay attention. The only way Ukraine is surviving because of American support. The only way Taiwan is surviving is with the American support. But if you minus the American weapons, utensils, pretty much everything, then it's fully Russia's progress. All of it. All of it. 100%. All of it. So like nuclear strategic capabilities, Russia holds the world's largest nuclear arsenal with approximately 6,490 warheads, including 1,600 deployed as conducted in extensive nuclear testing. Ukraine controls non-nuclear states, so that is very important. So when it's a non-nuclear state, that means anybody can knock it out. And Russia's a non-nuclear state. It doesn't have nuclear capabilities. So back in the day, Soviet nuclear weapons in the 1990 exchange for security assistance have been violated. Russia's nuclear capability serves strategic deterrent, central element of its military deterrent. So overall, Russia is powerful. So how does Ukraine stand out? Ukraine stands out because of the American military support. And that's one thing I reviewed. Until the American weapon lives in places like Taiwan and Ukraine, and that also goes for Israel. Until the American support live over there, that's how it's surviving. The main progress will come when you completely minus American military support. And the key of the challenge will be, can they make it? And that's when you officially find out, can they officially make it or can they not? And that's when the real result comes. And that's basically what he's talking about. But even the strongest of strongest defense sometimes can run out of equipment. And that's the consideration he's pretty much getting to right here.
Is victorious and a new order is going to emerge in the Middle East. And I would tell you that over the next few months, it will be obvious that that new order consists of 4 powerful states: Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey. I predict.
So like Turkey was predicted, okay? I saw Turk articles in like 2023. The only thing I didn't understand is that how will Turkey step into the middle? Okay, that I didn't know. It said places like Qatar, but Qatar didn't really do anything other than refill the Muslim Brotherhood. It's going to be dead with the Arabs. But when it comes to refill and Turkey's not as weak as it looks, I didn't know what role Turkey played. I didn't. I'm being honest. Even though Turks go back with Iran for many years before, back in the days before Jews even arrived as refugees from the Holocaust, they are old with the Iranians. Now you think for a minute, along with NATO help, how are they going to play a role? Well, as many Indians and a couple of people reviewed, that it does have the capacity to refill. And until Iran has the capacity to refill from China, Russia, and predicted what role Turkey will play, then yes. So it's like the land will be destroyed, Iran will be destroyed, but the politicians can still refill themselves up with weapons. See, Iraq was not like that. Iraq may have been destroyed, even though it was the same concept war where Israel told the Americans that, hey, they couldn't have a nuclear weapon, right? Fine, you bombed Iraq, you finished Iraq, okay. Iran's ending is not going to end like that. Iran, the country might get destroyed. Everything might get destroyed, but Iran politicians, they don't sound like they're going to surrender anytime soon. That's, I feel, one of the mistakes that Americans have made is that let the Shia leaders rule all over the Middle East. But one thing Iran did do, like the Ayatollahs after the Shah's fall, is that refill those organizations up and paid them to build themselves stronger, which is a threat today, and it feels like it's unstoppable. Now, America and Israel, like, they want to stop the Ayatollahs, but historically they can't because they have, well, these players behind the doors to refill it up. That's the biggest question in American society today, that no matter how many soldiers die, no matter who dies, can it refill itself up? That's the mystery question, and that's what he's saying. And according to some countries, the answer is a yes, and it's a mystery for all of us.
That Turkey will finally get off the bench and demonstrate that it is part of that axis. And that is the end of us and the finish of Israel in the region.
All right. So, of course, God is more powerful. I wouldn't take it as serious as people are getting cautious listening to that. God is more powerful than anything. However, like, I know when I spoke to this guy and when I watched this guy in like 2023, he showed me from a biblical standpoint. He showed me a lot of crazy stuff. And you think for a minute, like, you know, like, is he crazy? Is he stupid? What is he? What are you talking about, dude? That can't be real. But when you put statistics together, like right now, okay, I'll review Europe, okay? Some people predict that history is going to repeat itself. If, for example, let's see how I should put this into words. If Moroccans, which I don't see anything from Moroccans or Africans getting into a war with Spain. I see that as just like a babyish thing. I don't see them getting into a war anytime soon. But if it did, and then America supported the Moroccans, and then, of course, a lot of the European Christians will get mad at Jews that how dare you support Moroccans. Well, America support Moroccans because of the early days of Moroccan history with the Americans. Then that would open up the history back in the day when Jews lived in European countries and what happened to them. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, even though some people feel like it is. But I don't see a target for that. Not me. I don't see a target for that. However, I do see a target regarding up ahead, that who can refill Iran. Who can? It's not like it can't, but it can. And if that happens and the Gulf is officially destroyed, I'm saying it, if the Gulf is officially destroyed and all the bases are destroyed, how is U.S. going to survive and its soldier protecting Israel? Because every backup plan is finished, destroyed. Bases, places for the soldiers to feel safe, like the U.S. bases in the Arab countries, are destroyed. Now, how is U.S. going to do protection in the Middle East? How? There's U.S. safety, there's Israel safety, and all this stuff. You know, like I said, then of course God is more powerful too. You must never underestimate that. But these four nations, like how people are saying that if Iran falls and comes and how's Turkey? Turkey can play. This was expected in the deep future. How deep? I don't know. I don't know. Will it start by 2027? Will it start by 2028? But at some point, based on what this guy is saying, because this is exactly the information he gave me in 2023, how the ships are going to sail, how the ships are going to start before October 7th, which is why I listen to this guy. People may call me crazy, lunatic, like, nah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But a lot of the information he did give me historically did come true, right? So at some point, what he's talking about, a twist is going to come if U.S. does not come down to a conclusion, is how I'm going to put it. U.S. has to come down to a conclusion. Live or die. That's how you say in a war sometimes, live or die. And if you're going to live to continue the war, then there's going to be some unexpected surprises ahead, which basically what he's saying, because Iran does have a lot of refill buttons that people do not know about. Iran can refill itself up. Even if the country is destroyed, it can still refill itself up. And that's what people are concerned about, that if Iran's going to do that, how is American soldiers going to survive and how is it going to get through? Well, yeah. So I hope people understand sometimes and whose narrative is going to evolve. I know a lot of hatred has been expanded for the Jewish community in America. I've never seen that in the age of my 1990s being a teenager. Like, I didn't even know one or two friends of mine from school actually looked at Israel, and I never paid attention to that stuff. Yes, I knew about Israel. I was told about Israel, but in today's society, it's like, what are you? And I was just telling this to my friend Anila that, you're not going to get the support you're looking for, because it's either you're like pro-Palestine who hate, like, people who hate Zionists, or you're anti-Muslim and you don't like Muslims, period. There's two sides. So I'm like telling her, I don't know how you're going to get through this, and which donor is going to protect, do a participation in your organization based on all this. So after all this reviewing, I could say maybe if America does not come up with a solution, there's a slight possibility, just like how October 7th started, you can picture something else. And there's going to be pre-planners. Iran's going to pre-plan it. There's going to be a new bud in the block. But of course, that buddy has been part of Iran almost 2,000 years ago, since the times of Iran and its own personal empires with the Greeks and all that stuff. So that buddy that Iran, it's going to pitch in, it's not as simple as it looks. And now you think in the future for a minute, if that buddy enters, which European country would step up? My guess is maybe Greece. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not God. That's just my prediction. Maybe Greece. But it is predicted, all this stuff, what this guy said. This guy said 2 years ago, before October 7th happened, and now he's saying the same shit all over again in 2026 with another name into it. Now the question is, if you have a chessboard, how is it going to proceed? And that's what I'm waiting for now. I feel bad for my Iranian friends. I know I wrote the other day because they're like, oh, Trump, don't do the deal with the regime. Oh, Trump, don't do this deal with the regime. You're supposed to help the Iranians. But, I was reading something interesting about Iraq. Iraqis did the same thing. They liberated against Saddam Hussein and went on streets protesting like weirdo that we want Iraq back, we want the life with Prince Faisal back, and they liberated against Saddam, and they all ended up getting killed, just like how Iranians did. They got killed on streets, and then America stepped in, and rather than Saddam killing his own people, America stepped in, and then, of course, the war with Iraq, and then Iran participated in that war by supporting Israel against Iraq, including Spain. But if you look at it, 2026, Iraq is still standing where it was. What has changed? I don't see a change. Only Shia leadership is on there, and now Iran didn't play that way. What Iran did is, when the Shia leaders got approval from America, Iran took a different door. It started to do business with them instead. Like, hey, now that you guys are in power, I'm going to pay you a couple of money. I'm going to build you guys up, yada, yada, yada. And we're going to become the superpower. And that's exactly what Iran did. But one thing Iran didn't do is give up its own power to America. That now you think for a minute that, hey, this is a superpower war, is it? Yes, it is. Whose caliphate gets to rule the Middle East? Iran wants to keep his. America wants Iran to fall so it can lead the Middle East. And that leaves the Gulf in the middle. And Israel, I can't say, because sometimes Israelis say that we fight for our own interests, so that's why I don't give an answer. Maybe it's true. They're going to choose their own path. I don't know. I'm not God. But in the end, that's technically what it is. Fight for power. Who gets to lead? Whose mission is going to stay? Like, I was watching another documentary that I gave to a friend of mine, is that it's about what role has America played in the Middle East, even though back in the day, I used to think my father's like, being crazy, and I would be pro-American, support my country. Like, nah, why would my country do that? My country is not into all things. So I just ignored my dad. He's like, okay, you're missing the point here. I grew up here too, and I'm raised here. I know the politics too. I'm like, Dad, that's not true. Okay, no problem. As I grew up, then I would hear the same shit from Indians too. They're like, it is. You don't know it. It is. And then I sit into spaces, all these places, and say, America, America. So I'm just like, why do people always say it's America? So I started to read some stuff, and based on that reading, I went blank. And based on the reading, I found out that how America selected the Shia leadership without the American approval, those Shia leaders would not be there. They had to trespass the American approval to be in power of the Middle East. But, however, that didn't work with Iran. That didn't work with Iran. Iran makes its own rules, its own leads, its own everything. Now, today, having that power many years later, America may have Arabs, America may have the Sunni countries, but how to turn down Iran? And in 2026, leading to 2027, it's a mystery. In fact, for Taiwan, there was a gamble. There was a gamble by China said by 2030, I'm going to have Taiwan in my hands. And there's nothing that Americans can do anything about it. We are going to take it, and Americans can't do shit about it. By 2030, Taiwan is going to be officially ours. And I remember watching a documentary about that how the China leader said by 2030, it's over. It's going to be officially ours, and all these refugees have to either find a passage or stick to it, do something. And that freaked me. I'm like, what? What are you going to do with all the refugees, man? Like, are you seriously just going to take Taiwan like that? Mm-hmm. And I didn't hear a deadline for Russia, but it's in progress to knock out Ukraine now. You think for a minute, where is this going? And this guy is talking exactly 2 years later again about the same topic that he talked about in 2023. The only thing I can expect from this guy is that, I don't know, some people want the war to expand, some people don't. But the only prediction I can make about this, if the Republicans stay in power, maybe the war can extend. But if the Republicans lose by, the Dems or somebody else, then this narrative official's over, and I don't know what the hell is after. Who's gonna stay in power, things like that, who's gonna get the downfall. What I mean by the downfall is that who's gonna be told no, that we're not continuing any of these projects anymore, this, that, I don't know. But it's interesting to know this stuff that, hey, this is what's expected in the near future and what this guy says, because that's exactly how I started as a private journalist when I listened to this guy. Some of the stuff he said is like the most craziest things on earth. Like literally, like this is what biblical prophecy says, or this is how the sun and the moon's going to kiss. You think for a minute, you're a colonel, you're a military colonel. How do you know all this information? That's exactly what's my reaction when I listened to him in 2023. You're a military colonel. Like, how do you know all this stuff, dude? Like, what are you talking about? And unexpectedly, he's talking again 2-3 years later. Except this time, he added another name into the picture, and that is Turkey. Now we are going to find out with time, where is this going? And that's the best way I could put it. This is why I don't make content like other creators, because there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of pre-planned wars. There's going to be new villains into the story. Like my Jewish friend says that it's part of a Torah prophecy that the Persians must be destroyed and Persia must fall. But nothing happened. Iranians are still fighting. Nothing happened. Iranians are still yelling. Nothing happened. The only thing that's happening is the Americans making a choice that, hey, this is what we want and this is what we don't want in our own interest, and you're just going to have to go with the flow. Those people are still standing exactly where they are, just like how Iraqis standed in for their liberation against Saddam. And I honestly don't see any cure for until Ayatollah lives in America's personal agendas in the Middle East for peace or no peace. Like I said, Ayatollahs never bowed to America. The other leaders have, which is why the Arabs work with America. The other leaders have cooperated, but not this. So the conclusion is a new chapter is going to open in the next few years. Like I would say maybe by like 2027, maybe sooner than that. If the war expands, you're not going to get a happily ever after. People can stop dreaming like, oh, if we liberate the Persian people, we'll be free, and some old narrative that they once upon a time dreamed of is going to, you must be kidding. This is a war for power. Power, 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 power. Some of the Indian people are building behind the door, but they're playing smart. They're not making themselves a victim card to any of the wars. But this is a war for power. Whose power is going to succeed and whose power is going to fall in the Middle East. Now, one thing is pretty talented. Like, I told this to my Jewish friend, like, don't get me wrong, and I told her this, and she actually agreed with me, that some of the Jews, they do believe in power for survival. But if the American power fails, and knowing that some of the people supported like places like Taiwan, Ukraine, it's in the Billboard records, that's a scary sign for Jews. And that's something I told my friend, and she agreed with me. I'm like, if America fails in this war, bad sign for the Jews everywhere, because Russia is going to literally set its power on the European countries. And when the Russian power's on, that's the only way they're going to have gas. Russia said it. You pitch in this war, I'm going to take away your gas. Give it your best shot. Stay away from this war, because Russia is also fighting for power. So, that's what I say all the time. Never underestimate anything. And the narratives are just puppy play. This is the real deal. This is the real shit. I would show another documentary that was made by American leaders a while ago. I showed this to my nephew, but maybe some other time I'll show it, because I don't want to sound like I'm anti-American. But in a journalist point of view, there's a lot of things to understand about this. And things are warming up 2 years later again, just like they did before October 7th. Anybody nervous? I know I would be if I would be. That, hey, are we going to have new villains again? We're still not recovered from the other incident yet. Are we going to have another chapter? The question is, you're going to find out within 2027, and also if the Republicans win. If they lose, all right, y'all, I'm out of time, and I was sick last week, so I wasn't able to see you guys. I was sick with the virus. I'm still technically sick, which is why I have my coffee. But I haven't put anything up because this is what I was waiting for. I was waiting for ethical change source, and this is what he said. The same guy who gave me information in 2023 before October 7th. We are at the same phase again. Is something meant to happen in the next few months? We're about to find out. Take care, you all.